Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for visiting the YouTube channel for bestbiblecommentaries.com. In this video, I'm going to show you about 15 or so new releases in categories like Bible commentaries, Christian theology, and apologetics. Before I do that, I would appreciate it if you would click the thumbs up button, the like button, which is the thumbs up button, because that helps me out on YouTube. Also, feel free to comment or subscribe if you wish. Also, I'm going to put links to all of these books in the description box below. And if you are interested in exploring these titles more or wish to add one to your library, if you use that link, it will help support the channel. So that's a new thing I'm doing. And I've taken ads off my platforms for better user engagement. But so maybe consider using that description box as a way to support my channel. Thanks for considering that. First up is the new volume in the Reformation Commentary on Scripture series. It covers Isaiah 1 through 39. So, of course, there'll be a volume 2 that covers Isaiah 40 through 66. This Reformation Commentary series is obviously incomplete. Volumes are still coming out, but it is doing very well. It's building on the success of the Ancient Christian Commentary on series, which is a similar looking book, except for it's a black design rather than a green design. So whereas the Ancient Christian Commentary series utilized the early church fathers, this entire series utilizes the Protestant reformers. So it's not just a bunch of quotes from Luther or Calvin. There are dozens and dozens of scholars and theologians and pastors from the Reformation era that are used in this volume, like throughout this series. Next up is the newest title by Janine Brown, who is now at Bethel Seminary, and she has written other really well-received books. She wrote the Matthew Commentary and the Teach the Text series, for example. So this is titled Embedded Genres in the New Testament, Understanding Their Impact for Interpretation, and this is from Baker Academic. A couple of examples of chapter titles include, Does Paul Break into Song in Philippians 2? The Christ Poem in the Letter to the Ephesians. Another one is, Why Put a Household Code in the Middle of a Letter? And that is from 1 Peter. Is Jesus a riddler in Matthew? The role of riddles in the Gospel of Matthew. So, hermeneutical study. And looks pretty interesting. So that's from Janine Brown. Next up is the newest theology release from Thomas Schreiner, who's written many commentaries and many books on Christian theology. And the title of the book and the color of the book kind of blend together. So hopefully you can see that. This is titled Christ Crucified, A Theology of Galatians by Thomas Schreiner. So I believe this is the first volume in a new series that Crossway is coming out with. It says series edited by Thomas Schreiner and Brian Rossner. So I recognize Rossner too as a New Testament commentator. Up here it just says New Testament Theology, so I'm guessing that's the name of the series. My copy arrived damaged, so hopefully yours will not. So there are three parts: the conflict, the gospel, and the new life. So the main content is about 110 pages, so that gives you an idea of the depth. The next up is biographical called The Blurred Cross by New Testament scholar Richard Bauckham, A Writer's Difficult Journey with God. Richard Bauckham wrote what I think is the best reviewed 2 Peter and Jude commentary from the WBC series. WBC, yes. And I also know him from Jesus and the Eyewitnesses, which was a very well-received book that came out about maybe 15 or 20 years ago now. Anyway, about 2 years ago or so, Richard Bauckham nearly lost his ability to read. And so this book is about that trial in his life. So obviously, losing, experiencing an ailment with your eyesight as a writer and a reader and scholar is pretty alarming. So that's his story. It's called The Blurred Cross. Wonderful title. All right, this is a new release from IVP. It's called The Divine Christology of the Apostle Paul, Retrospect and Prospect. Chris Bruno, John Lee, and Thomas Schreiner all contribute to this project. I haven't spent a lot of time with it. However, I think it's kind of a survey, kind of a review of Pauline theology in maybe the second half of the 20th century, the last 50 years. Okay, so the last 50 years, Pauline scholarship has provided numerous insights to both the academy and the church, and it goes on. So it's kind of a recent review and response to Pauline studies in the last few years. All right, this one very, very interesting, by D. Brent Sandy, who I know from, he co-authored The Lost World with John Walton, and used to be at Wheaton. Okay, so the title is around the book here, Hear Ye the Word of the Lord, What We Miss If We Only Read the Bible. And so this is about the oral culture in Bible times and hearing the Word of God. Hear ye the word of the Lord. So again, the subtitle, What We Miss When We Only Read the Bible. So this is about hearing the Bible. Very interesting. I can't recall seeing a book on there's a lot on the oral communication and oral culture, but he's combining some concepts here that I'm not sure I've seen before. So it looks pretty original and pretty interesting. All right. This is a Call to Contentment by David Kaywood, Pursuing Godly Satisfaction in a Restless World. This is a new release from Christian Focus. I noticed that Tim Chaley's blurbs the back of it, so that's noteworthy. David Kaywood is pastor at Eastside Community Church in Jacksonville, Florida. The book is in 3 parts: Understanding Contentment, Applying Contentment, and Cultivating Contentment. So, looks to be about 150 pages or so. Next up is the latest release in the ESBT series, which I always forget the name, Essential Studies in Biblical Theology series, edited by Benjamin Glad. And this is The Return of the Kingdom, A Biblical Theology of God's Reign by Stephen Dempster, who I recognize from other books that he's written. And so I haven't spent a lot of time with it. So this is about what I know, the title and the subtitle, A Biblical Theology of God's Reign. Looks like there's discussion questions at the end of every passage too, so that's always helpful. Next up is the new release in the 7 Sentences series from IVP. So this is World Religions in 7 sentences, a small introduction to a vast topic. So there's Old Testament 7 sentences, New Testament 7 sentences, philosophy 7 sentences, Christian history in 7 sentences, and there's some others as well. So chapter topics include atheism, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and a few others. This is written by, I cannot remember how to say his last name. This is a Christian apologist. His Christian Apologetics book is excellent. I refer to it often. Douglas, is it Groothuis? Sorry if I butchered that. My apologies. But I do recommend the author, even though I can't say his name. So that's New Religions in the 7 Sentences series. Next up is the newest volume in the Evangelical, Exegetical Commentary series. It's by Michael Burer, which I can't remember where he's at. Oh, he's at Dallas Theological Seminary. And so pretty sizable volume for Galatians, about 550 pages or so. This is a mid-level commentary series. It's designed for pastors. And not only is there in-depth exegesis in this volume and others in this series, but there's also, here, I flipped to it, there's also application and devotional implications for the different sections that are covered. So that is helpful to pastors and those in ministry who are looking to make the text relevant to today. So that's Galatians. Nice blurb from Darrell Bach, Scott Duvall, and some others. So looks like this volume's being well received already. I'm always excited to see a new resource on Habakkuk. It's one of my favorite books. This one's by Christopher H. Christopher J.H. Wright, Hearing the Message of Habakkuk, Living by Faith in a Violent World. I wonder if this is going to be a series, Hearing the Message of. And Wright has written a few different commentaries I have on my shelf. The main content in this book, I flipped through it a little bit already. It's about 100 pages or so, and it's a passage-by-passage explanation of Habakkuk and with reflections for today. So I like it when minor prophets they're not like combined together into 5 minor prophets in one book. I like it when they're standalone and get the attention that they deserve. This is the new release in the New Studies in Biblical Theology series, edited by D.A. Carson and Benjamin Glad. This one's called Answering the Psalmist's Perplexity, New Covenant Newness in the Book of Psalms by James Healy Hutchinson, who is director of, there's no way I can say that name. He's at an institute, a director of an institute in Belgium. That's about as much as I can get out of that phrase. So I haven't spent a lot of time with this one, so I'm not going to try and speak on it when I don't have much familiarity with it. But for your consideration, Answering the Psalmist's Perplexity. Next up from Crossway is part parenting, part apologetics, part theology. What do I say when? A Parent's Guide to Navigating Cultural Chaos for Teens and Children. The chapter titles, I did read a chapter in this book, and it was very good. Introductory, but very good. The chapter titles include abortion, sexuality, gender, homosexuality, identity, transgenderism, technology, political engagement. Great for small groups, discussion groups, youth groups, Sunday school classes. There's also discussion questions at the end of every chapter, or conversation starters was what they say. So that's very helpful to leaders and teachers. So it's called What Do I Say When? One of my favorite authors has a new release it's by Philip Graham Ryken. It's called I Have My Doubts, How God Can Use Your Uncertainty to Reawaken Your Faith. This is from Crossway. Every chapter explores a story of someone in the Bible who is doubting, including Sarah, Moses, Naomi, Asaph, Jeremiah, Thomas, Peter, and a few others. So Ryken combines very rich theology with relevant applications and reflections. Next up is an introduction to Christian Introduction to World Religions by Winfried Corduan, I think is how you say his last name. Neighboring Faiths. This is a new edition, mostly used in undergraduate settings, but anybody interested in learning more about world religions and kind of a reader-friendly, visual-friendly format would benefit from this book. One of the things that is helpful, I think, at the end of each chapter of that book is there's usually 7 to 10 different suggestions for writing papers on the topic of the chapter, which can be very helpful to teachers and students. Next up is the Matthew volume in the Interpretation Bible Commentary series. So probably many of you are familiar with the Interpretation series that started coming out in maybe the 80s or so. Very colorful books from Westminster John Knox Press. So this is I'm not sure exactly how to title it, label it. Is it, a reboot, a revision, an update? Not exactly sure. The inside content looks similar to the commentaries in the series that have been around for 30 or 40 years, and which focuses on literary and theological issues in the text, and it's designed for pastors. So you're not going to find as much about background information or there's not a separate application section. There are theological reflection in volumes in that series, which can help with the application. So, but it's mostly literary and theological insights. Last is Christian Apologetics. This is from Zondervan. Christian Apologetics, an anthology of primary sources. So this is kind of a reader covering, like a lot of classic excerpts from Christian apologetics. So if you're interested in kind of a survey of original sources, this would be a great resource for you. Selections include writing from St. Augustine, Blaise Pascal, C.S. Lewis, Alvin Plantinga, and others. So, all right, I invite you to explore the links, use the links below to explore all these titles further, and I'll see you next time.